In truth, I'm not somebody who, over the course of his life as of present standing, has frequented as many vampire stories as I'm sure others have, considering it is, even still to this day, quite a dominant trend within the visual arts space. I do note that, considering many of the recent entries within the film and television sphere specifically, that there's been a bit of a resuming period post the Twilight heyday, which I've never seen that series or even read the books. I know how popular they were, though. But there was a bit of a breath, at least from what I saw, in terms of some of the major pictures coming out, and now we're starting to see a bit of a return to form of that, and we're starting to see it blend and intersect with the music sphere, at least for right now, by my lens. I don't happen to be all too surprised at all either who's bringing this trend to bear, considering we're talking about BLACKBRIAR here, and their interest within Gothic storytelling, which, as I understand, Carmilla is quite a novelty within the respective literary figures in a vampire context, considering, as just from a brief look, at least on some of its summarized history, this predated Dracula, which I'm well informed on the name of and the identity of the character, but Carmilla not as much. And as I understand, it's a sort of a tale of forbidden interest, right, with two, and what we're going to see, I guess, paired by visual illustration with a vocal harmony I'm quite interested to engage with just based on the little teasers I've seen. Now, I'll tell you walking in, of course, as many of you know, I love BLACKBRIAR, a favorite of mine since 2020 when I was first introduced, and I consider my love for symphonic metal and them being one of the quite dominant voices of favorability for me within a Dutch origin. And if you've not yet been introduced, I think Moonflower, just based on not just instrumental capability, which we're going to humor together on a fresh lens, I've not yet experienced this number other than the little teasers, but vocally speaking, I'm not surprised this one's going to really register, considering my love for hearing the vocal articulation with Zora Kolk and her reach. It's amazing. If you've never humored her before, she is a favorite of mine, among many other leading female singers within the European-based metal world, and many of you know how much I love that space, whether it be on familiarized listens or fresh discoveries, which we oftentimes take here. But BLACKBRIAR, oh, an all too familiar name to me, and one that I revere. But Marjana Semkina is the collaborative guest and a fresh introduction here. You know, it's not too often that we've analyzed, in fact, I don't think we have at this point yet. Note that word, BLACKBRIAR fans, and I think some of you can read into my hint there if I keep it, veiled for the future. You'll see what I mean. At present, we've not yet humored the graces of any BLACKBRIAR collabs. And this is quite enjoyable for me, considering the last one I can think of at the top of my brain being the Snow White and Rose Red harmony between Zora and Uli Perhonen, a favorite German-based vocalist of mine from an operatic extreme, and she's incredible. From Snow White Blood originally, although I don't know what she's doing now. There's a new lead singer there that's taken over, and she's sort of passed the torch on, but Uli is an incredible singer if you've never heard her before, but her and Zora together really transfixed me. And Marjana, again, based on the teasers, I think it's pronounced Marjana. I might have the pronunciation wrong, and feel free to clarify if so down below, and I apologize if that is the case. What I know of this number, and again, it's very, very slim, but the little teasers put out, I can already hear the voice of Marjana being delightfully approachable. And as it adapts to Carmilla, right, this tale between these two ladies that it's a friendship and a bond soured, shall we say, by the reality of Carmilla's true nature. Now, who's playing which role, we're going to find out for ourselves. But again, if this is faithfully told, which BLACKBRIAR, it's quite beautiful to watch the visual experiences. We consider the honesty of these tales as explored in history or in other forms of media, and there's been so much inspiration communicated by their works. Most respectfully, again, in recent standing to A Dark Euphony, the second album debut from them, but many early entries, whether it be their EPs or the first album, we have seen this adaptation between literature or another form of storytelling within another medium adapted into music so faithfully and vibrantly, and still with the creativity that, again, as these myths get fleshed out, we not only experience this great reverence of the fantasy that these tales integrate, but alongside that, this accompanying effect or allowance for a broader interpretation and relatability in a contemporary sense, if again directed by the number and permitted. And there's maybe more cases that float into the mythic direction explicitly, but there is still a natural allowance, is true for many artists, to take a piece in a way that, again, you don't divert the meaning or the interpretation, you keep the lyrics as is, but at least in your own mind, you perceive them in a different way. There's that allowance for alteration if need be. But whether you want to look at it from that angle or as told by inspiration as indicated by the group, BLACKBRIAR is an impressive name and one of the best I've seen in terms of mythic adaptation. And in their visualizer space, the productions they put on are equally compelling. especially considering storytelling adaptation. We've seen a mix of performance videos now and direct narrative adaptations. And I think Moonflower is going to fall in spirit of that, which I love the name already. It's quite tempting. There's this sort of, from what I remember, mystique, not only in the visualization of a moonflower, beauty that comes out of the darkness. Yeah, that fits the total nature. That's reference from, I believe, the pansymaiden.com website. That totally makes sense if you understand even just a broad sense, as I do, of the Carmilla myth. Let's examine this in a cohesive form, told in story by BLACKBRIAR, with, I'm sure, mesmeric vocal production and beautiful instrumentals, as they always captivate my attention, and I'm sure for many of you as well, yours. And by the way, anybody that approaches over your longtime fan or initiate listener to their work, and this is maybe your first step into the BLACKBRIAR world, I want you to feel welcome here. Let's examine this together and enjoy music in company, which, as I've always said, is the best way to experience it. I'm taken back with this one to some of the earlier EPs in the Cause of Shipwreck days because of the key choice and how dainty the illustration of instrumentals are, paired with beautiful vocals. Like your voice, Sora. This is a fitting collaboration. Look at note the similarities in the voice pitches. It's deceitfully even. You jump between different vocal roles, you're almost tempted into thinking it's the same singer because they are so similar. So, is Marjana portraying the vampire role? I mean, she mentioned teeth. The adaptation on the instrumental here is beautiful. This really is, like I said, a dark back-end review to some of their earlier EPs. This one just glows. This was on the teaser, so I know this a little bit, which is what foretold such a beautiful encounter. And hearing it in context. I was hoping we would get Never Ascent. I love having an experience that takes me right back to the earliest of offerings from them. I'm considering in terms of the collection of their EPs. As I said, a review of Roots here based on the key similarity, I think back immediately to, what was the name of the first fraction? No. Here I am, a BLACKBRIAR fan, and I forget the name. Like Fractured Fairy Tales or something. It's whatever the one that Until Eternity was on, that debut entrance. I remember how beautiful the encounters were from each piece that demonstrated quite relevant to this one, similar key pattern, and how madly I fell in love with the tragic nature to them. And there were a couple pieces, I'm thinking specifically, yes, Until Eternity, Deadly Nightshade, Fractured Fairy Tale, all of those are echoed well by the spirit of Moonflower. This one's just an enchanting release, though. But for me, again, to dig back into such an early time of BLACKBRIAR's history that I have mad reverence for, and a phenomenon that we have seen retold in more recent BLACKBRIAR ventures, it's just beautiful for me. But this one, the quality of the vocal orchestration and structure, this one's so beautifully molded. I absolutely love it. You know, as I said, in terms of you walking in, if you're an initiate listener and encounterance to BLACKBRIAR and Zora more specifically and her vocals, look at those reaches. It's such an advanced technique and articulation. Remember, again, where she goes, it's unapologetic. You just fall in love with it. Every drift, and even how we start, again, our origin of walking into the Carmilla world as Zora's watching from the window. Speaking of the Gothic setting, again, like I said, BLACKBRIAR produces some of the most beautiful visualizers, in my opinion, that they've offered to other artists. I have noted in our time together, though I don't know what the order will be yet of debut here, probably this first, so, you don't know what I have necessarily upcoming. Should I spoil you? Some of the recent Diana von Giersbergen solo project anthems that BLACKBRIAR is doing the visualizers for, which I know all too well, and I cannot wait to share those with you because I freaking love each entry on Soulward Bound as it's released so far. But the visualizers of all three numbers after the storm, Unleashed the Siren, and the newest one, A Symphonic Tragedy. They're beautiful. As well as I know the artist that I will get to at some later date, but she's on my list for Phase 2, just a little hint of what's to come. Marcella Bovio, they also played a role for one video, as I remember. I forget what exactly the name of it was. It was like, it was one of the newer ones, I think from one of her associated groups. Anyway, I can't remember the name at the moment. It's on my list. Anywho, and I'll post in reference to whatever one I'm speaking of. As I was saying, the quality of, again, illustrating reverential Gothic tales in literary history of 19th century origin, I believe, so we're going way back with this one, I think an 1872 debut, bringing that to life in the 2020 world, where in that era of 2020 to 2030, bringing it into the modern window with such a mad reverence in every quality of the visualization, each little shot to it, every angle of camera work, and the interaction between... I'll come back to that, but again, as I was saying, in a broad respect, the visualizer and the setting choice, this monastery atmosphere is just beautiful to look at. And all the shots of nature, just the plant life, the serene setting, tempting, right? And seemingly innocent, but still veiled in darkness, right? Like Carmilla as a character, which I believe Marjana, based on the vocal roles as structured into the song and who's singing, and certain line work about, I dare not show my teeth. I know it's a quite obvious direct line to the inspiration, right? Speaking of the vampire, an attraction that, lucky for me, I never have to worry about something going this south because I never let people this close to me in real life. So if a vampire were ever to walk in, it wouldn't be a risk to me. Then maybe there'd be other unfortunate souls out there like poor Zora who thinks she's found a friend, right? That there's a shared association between two beautiful ladies and coming into each other's graces in this tempting friendship that just isn't meant to be, It's wonderfully exercised and, again, very faithful to the nature of the Carmilla tale. It's beautifully recaptured, and again, with the vocal specification on everybody. The collaborative association here is quite luminescent and beautiful, but certainly works given the association of vocal pitch and capability that each artist, Marjana and Zora, have to one another. They are parallel complements, but I am still quite shocked by the extent to how that collaboration reaches an effect, because you don't just see it, again, with the beauty of the song as limited there, just in its own execution, but how it's molded to the sense of the Carmilla myth and explored and aiding the visual performance. It really adds this feeling of connection that on vocals, you don't have to necessarily go with the image to understand the direction of the Carmilla myth. The audio does enough of that for you in its storytelling, so you get to see this transcendent piece that if we were to abandon the visuals, I'm not saying to do so, but if we're analyzing it again from, if this were just released without a visualizer accompaniment, and we were just strictly listening to it in effective emotion and understanding of character within an audio sense, that connection expounds beyond the screen. Truly, as I said, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this, but I'm not looking necessarily for concurrence of opinion, because of course music is first and foremost a subjective art. I just think it's going to be easy for many of us to consider Carmilla under this framework, because it's so clear to me, evidenced beautifully by the video and by the song we just entertained, which is going to immediately become, I'm sure, one of my favorite BLACKBRIAR scores among many. Again, this is the top favorite group for me in the symphonic metal sphere today, and their own capabilities are spoken of very well and highlighted, whether instrumentally or certainly on vocals, and by association to fitting collaborations, which Marjana certainly was a great fit to pair with Zora. For the Carmilla role, this really is a beautiful pick. I've not seen a group yet in our time together. We've seen a couple in the European sphere boast mythic exploration, but the extent to what BLACKBRIAR captures, I'm still in profound amazement of, because it's not just as superficial, we imagined the tale visually. We imagined it in audio form. We imagined it to each stroke of voice between artists. We emboldened that with the effect of the instrumentals. We made it this severe, tragic picture, this twist of fate, caught under this darker cloud of a number, which, again, it's beautiful. That's what makes Gothic symphonic metal so interesting. And BLACKBRIAR truly has a definitive expertise in this sphere, one that I absolutely revere and will always, certainly in our time together and any future adventures that this band chooses to unlock for us, any other tales they choose to seek, any other tales or myths that this band chooses to adapt, just you walk in with the sense of grace, and your suspicion, or your presumption, it's a better word, beautifully rewarded, even more than you could predict. And again, I had a little window of a score walking in, just a little, teaching me again about the effect of Marjana's transfixing and mesmeric vocal structures. Again, that faintness, Zora and Marjana echo each other so well. I can't get over, again, like I said, with Uli's respect in that collaboration, how fitting the artists were in harmony together and individually. Same thing here. Same thing. What BLACKBRIAR has to offer in a collaborative association respect to other artists that are equally talented, like Marjana, and I can't wait to listen to more from her one day, and we'll definitely take that exploration for sure, because I'm mesmerized here. These are some of the best collaborative works that I've heard yet, and we've looked at a wealth of them, but Moonflower does stand out. I really like the approach to this piece, as scary as it might be to be in Zora's poor situation. If you think in your life that you found somebody, that your paths have crossed with this person that, speaking of, again, generalized relatability, I can already see that potential of Moonflower. I mean, you want to talk about a practical sense of, like, relationships that are going to reveal their fangs in time. I relate all too, well to that. Again, you can have this be true in a mythic context or true to life, dependent on your vantage and what you choose to entertain by perception. And both are equal. Both are fine. As I was saying, you meet somebody that you think is a safe outlet, and then you find out later, no, this person wasn't. It's an all too tragic tale, but it is quite too relatable in general in our world today. And Moonflower is a beautiful mythic interpretation of that, but still that sense of longing that you like the idea of that person, at least in the more positive form. But then when you find out the true nature, it's, it's abandoned ship. Anyway. Or at least introduced by the end of the video. Maybe you continue down that path. Maybe it's a tragic and sympathetic true nature, as Carmilla voices, and is beautifully recaptured by BLACKBRIAR. I quite like this one. Again, on score grounds, it's beautiful. And it takes me right back to the early days of BLACKBRIAR and why I fell in love with them in the beginning. Some of my favorite scores are echoed here well on key, and on instrumental mastery and vocals, certainly, it's a beautiful piece. Incredibly palatable and approachable, I'm sure, for anybody, whether you're a longtime fan or a new listener to their work. And if you are a new listener, are you impressed by the definition of Moonflower and BLACKBRIAR generally and what they have to offer? They are a great attribute in the symphonic metal sphere, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. But of course, as I said, music is first and foremost an individual art and how we appreciate it. So whatever your thoughts are, feel free to chime in on the discussion if you wish to down below. I love it. And again, as I credit to any artist, and BLACKBRIAR is certainly no exception, open door policy for what we're about to humor from whatever the group decides to release, or has released. Hint, hint. Anyway. I'll save reality for what I exactly mean, for a later time down the road, but as it unveils itself, what I'm planning, but I absolutely love Moonflower. In the present sense of an Ever Blackbriar single, it's an incredibly glamorous encounter. A tragic one, but at the same time beautifully enamoring. And the collaborative respects of Zora and Marjana, who's a great introduction for me. I'm sure for us as well, if we happen to be walking in with fresh eyes to her. It's a collaboration that, like Carmilla, it's an attraction that was meant to be. And it totally works in service of a number in the myth, beautifully recapturing that sensibility to the original 19th century tale from what I know of it and can recognize, broadly speaking, adapting it not only well in a visual sense, but certainly in audio. It's an exquisite performance. Flawless. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.